Empires rose and fell, borders shifted, Jews were expelled, persecuted, welcomed, rejected, but Friday night still arrived and candles were still lit.
Oh, this is amazing. Oh, guys, I've never been in a synagogue before. Thank you for letting me see this.
What will remain of us? What object from our daily lives would future generations place behind glass? A smartphone? A metro card? A coffee cup from a Tel Aviv cafe? It makes you think. It makes you slow down. Silver from Eastern Europe, filigree work from North Africa, bold shapes from the Middle East. There was a section on life cycle events, birth, bar mitzvah, marriage, mourning, and it hit me how structured Jewish life is around memory. A baby is born, rituals mark it. A boy becomes responsible for commandments, marked. A couple marries, marked. A loved one dies, marked. Even grief has structure, even joy has tradition.
Спасибо большое, Тома. Мне очень приятно.
Я очень рада. Я когда вот так, я радуюсь за вас, потому что я думаю, люди пришли, они должны насладиться.
Спасибо.
Hello, what's up everyone? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's your boy, the Crackhead, wishing you all a wonderful day. This is my concluding story at the Eretz Israel Museum. As the sun begins to sink, something shifts. Not just in the sky, but inside me.
Joseph and Morton Mandel Moza парк.
Это парк.
Да.
Вот мы сейчас с тобой пришли в парк. Вот я просто тебе покажу, ты будешь гулять один,
да.
Я тебе уже не нужна.
Да.
Вот ты будешь вот так, пока здесь у нас не было ничего, просто зелень была. А сейчас они вот так все организовали, и скамеечки. И вот так, все можешь погулять.
Окей.
Да, я сейчас с тобой вот сюда пойду, потом ты пойдешь. Идем, я потому что там выйду на автобус.
30 minutes ago, I was just walking through exhibits, walking through ancient stones, old tools, fragments of civilizations long gone. But now, as I stand at the edge of the courtyard, watching the light soften over Tel Aviv, I realized this was never just a museum visit. It was a journey through time. From the moment I stepped onto the grounds, I wasn't just a visitor, I was a witness to thousands of years layered beneath this land. Every artifact I passed, whether carved in stone, shaped in clay, or forged in metal, carried fingerprints of someone who once stood under the same sky. And that's what hits me the hardest. This place doesn't just display history, it preserves human presence. Inside the archaeology wings, I saw tools that once tilled the earth, lamps that once lit dark homes, coins that once exchanged hands in markets filled with noise and bargaining. These weren't just objects behind glass. They were once parts of daily life. Someone depended on them. Someone built dreams around them. And now, centuries later, I walked past them holding a phone in my hand, recording, narrating, documenting my own moment in time. The contrast is overwhelming.
Потому что обычно сейчас...
Да, вау, красивый парк.
Походи погуляй, хорошо? А я сейчас туда выйду.
Спасибо большое, Тома. Мне очень приятно.
Я очень рада. Я когда вот так, я радуюсь за вас, потому что я думаю, люди пришли, они должны насладиться.
Спасибо.
Очень похож. И тебе повезло, это новый парк. Год или два всего.
А, да?
Да. Его раньше не было. Были только растения, они здесь все благоустроили, вот эти камешки, вот эти скамеечки. Ничего этого не было.
Вау. Красивый парк. Спасибо, Тома. Спасибо.
Счастливо, Вашингтон, я твое имя никогда не забуду.
Спасибо.
There is something humbling about standing face to face with civilizations that rose, flourished, and disappeared. While you are still in motion, still breathing, still building your own story. In the glass pavilion, the sunlight reflected through ancient vessels, shimmering like frozen drops of history. Glass fragile, transparent, surviving empires. I thought about how many hands shaped those pieces, how many fires burned to create them, how many journeys they survived before finding rest here. And then I stepped outside again. The museum grounds feel different once you've observed it all.
But again, whoever is interested in, if you have the data to watch these things, you can watch 2 hours video, 3 hours video, as long as you're learning something. This is what this channel and page is all about.
The trees seem older, the air feels heavier, not in a burdened way, but in a sacred way, like it carries memory. Some museums feel silent. This one speaks. It speaks of farmers and craftsmen, of traders crossing deserts, of families building homes from stone, of innovation long before the word technology existed. It tells the story of a land that has never been empty, a land layered with footsteps, prayers, conflicts, celebrations, survival. Walking through the reconstructed ancient dwellings, I imagine voices echoing off the walls, children running barefoot, pots clinking, fires crackling, life unfolding in simplicity and struggle. And then I step back into modern Tel Aviv, cars passing, people jogging, cafes buzzing, and I see the continuity. We are not separate from history. We are its extension. That's what makes this visit powerful. It is not about nostalgia. It's not about romanticizing the past. It's about understanding scale, understanding that our present moment with all its chaos and speed is just one thin layer in a deep, ancient foundation. At the coin collection, I paused longer than I expected. Small pieces of metal, simple, worn, yet once they represented power, trade, survival. Kingdom stamps the authority onto them. Today, they sit quietly under museum lights. Power fades, empires fade, but stories remain. And this museum safeguards those stories. There is something poetic about walking through exhibits that span prehistoric times to the modern era, all within one complex. It compresses thousands of years into a single afternoon. It forces perspective. Your worries shrink. Your deadlines feel temporary. Your frustrations lose their intensity. Because when you stand in front of a 3,000-year-old artifact, you realize humanity has endured far worse than a bad week. The land itself has seen invasions, rebuilding, destruction, rebirth, and yet here we are, still creating, still building, still telling stories. As I walk through the outdoor exhibit, the reconstructed oil press caught my attention, the simplicity of it, the genius of it. People understood their environment. They innovated with what they had. No digital screens, no electricity, just knowledge passed from generation to generation. And that continuity, that passing down, is exactly what this museum represents. It's a bridge. Wow. How big these doors are. This museum represents a bridge. I say it again. The Eretz Israel Museum represents a bridge between ancient and modern, between dust and skyscrapers, between clay lamps and LED lights. And maybe that's why this visit feels personal, because when you walk through a place like this, you're not just observing artifacts, you're measuring yourself against time. What will remain of us? What object from our daily lives would future generations place behind glass? A smartphone? A metro card? A coffee cup from a Tel Aviv cafe? It makes you think. It makes you slow down. The quiet corners of the museum grounds invite reflection. Even the architecture feels intentional. Open spaces that let the sky in. Pathways that guide you gently rather than rush you. Nothing, I say nothing, feels aggressive here. It feels respectful. Respectful of the past. Respectful of the present. Respectful of the land. As I prepare to leave, I turn around for one last look. The buildings stand calm against the fading sky. The exhibits inside grow quieter as closer time approaches. But history doesn't close. It continues. Somewhere in the city tonight, a child will learn about ancient Israelite pottery for the first time. Somewhere, a student will write a paper about archaeological findings displayed here. Somewhere, another visitor will walk this same path and feel the same sense of awe. That's the power of a place like this. It doesn't just store objects, it sparks curiosity, it anchors identity, it invites questions, and maybe most importantly, it reminds us that we are temporary caretakers of a much larger story.
Nice.
As I walk toward the exit, I feel gratitude. Gratitude for preservation, for historians, for archaeologists, for curators who dedicate their lives to protecting fragments of the past so that people like me can walk through and feel connected. Gratitude for living in a time where history is accessible, documented, protected, and gratitude for this land, complex, layered, resilient. Today wasn't just a tour. Today wasn't just an exploration, it was perspective. It was standing in the presence of thousands of years and realizing that my own story, even though small, still matters. Because one day, we too will be history. Our buildings will age. Our technologies will become relics. Our voices will fade into archives. But what we build, what we preserve, what we pass down, that's what lasts. The Jack, Joseph and Morton Mandel Moza Park is a 22-acre public green space integrated into the Eretz Israel Museum, Moza, in the Ramat Aviv neighborhood of Tel Aviv. It was opened in July 2024 and was designed to remove the division between the museum and the city, providing a free, accessible area for residents and visitors to stroll through nature and archaeological exhibits. The park is centered around Tel Kassil, an ancient Philistine settlement mound. Visitors can also view a collection of ancient mosaics, a reconstructed olive press, and a flour mill. A planetarium is located within the park grounds, offering space-themed shows and educational activities.
You guys remember in the beginning I told you this is a very big place, very big land.
The landscape includes an ecological pond, grapevine trellises, mulberry trees, and sheep tracks, which are winding paths, with hundreds of seating areas and shady corners. The Jewish Culture and Folklore Pavilion also sits in the heart of the park, housing one of Israel's largest Judaica collections.
It's the bathroom. Jewish Culture and Folklore Pavilion. Is it open or are you closed?
The last pavilion I'm taking you into is not just a building, but I'm taking you into memory. I'm taking you into identity, into the beating heart of tradition. Because my time at the Jewish Culture and Folklore Pavilion inside Eretz Israel Museum wasn't just another museum stop. It felt like walking into the living room of generations, standing there in Tel Aviv, a city known for speed, for startups, for beaches, and for nightlife. I stepped into a space that slows everything down, a space where stories aren't written in headlines but in fabric, ritual objects, songs, and everyday life. And immediately, I felt it. This pavilion doesn't shout history, it breathes it. The first thing that struck me was how human everything felt. Not royal treasures, not massive statues, not weapons of conquest, but life. Wedding dresses carefully embroidered by hand, Sabbath candlesticks worn smooth from years of lighting, spice boxes from Havdalah ceremonies.
Local Judaica. Decorative Judaica items reflect local history with its varied heritage and socio-cultural stratifications.
Torah mantles stitched with love, everyday objects, but each carrying centuries of movement, exile, resilience. I wasn't just looking at artifacts, I was looking at survival. Jewish culture didn't grow in one place, it traveled. It scattered. It adapted from North Africa to Eastern Europe, from Yemen to Poland, from Morocco to Iraq. Traditions crossed the deserts and seas, and somehow they held together. Inside this pavilion, you feel that migration. Glass cases display ceremonial objects from communities that no longer exist as they once did. Entire walls that were vibrant, musical, intellectual, now represented by a candlestick, a prayer shawl, a spice container, and yet they don't feel gone. They feel present. I paused in front of traditional garments, intricate textiles from Jewish communities around the world. The colors were bold, the patterns distinct. You could almost tell geography just by looking at the stitching. Each garment whispered, "This is who we are." But even more powerful was the realization that these weren't costumes. They were worn at weddings, at festivals, at circumcisions, at celebrations of life. They absorbed tears and laughter. They witnessed vows. They saw generations grow, and now they rest under museum lights, not forgotten, but honored. One section focused on the home, the Jewish home. And that's when it became deeply personal, because Jewish culture has always centered around the home. Shabbat dinners, holiday meals, storytelling around the table. It's not just religion, it's rhythm. Candles lit at sunset every Friday. Bread braided with intention. Blessings passed from parents to child. Looking at old Shabbat candlesticks from different countries, I imagine the scenes they once illuminated. Small apartments in cold European towns, courtyards in Moroccan cities, stone houses in Yemen, and eventually homes here in Israel. Different languages, different accents, same flame. That continuity is overwhelming when you think about it. Empires rose and fell. Borders shifted. Jews were expelled, persecuted, welcomed, rejected. But Friday night still arrived, and candles were still lit.
Oh, this is amazing. You know, I've never been in a synagogue before. No. Thank you for letting me see this. Beautiful. This is 18th century?
No, it's only in museum.
Wow, guys, this is the first time I am in a synagogue. I only see synagogue from outside. I don't know what the inside looks like. From Nigeria. Yeah. Nice. Thank you for showing me that. Now I can boldly say I was... Yeah, but they wouldn't let me go in because I'm not Jewish. Yeah.
There was a section on life cycle events, birth, bar mitzvah, marriage, mourning. And it hit me how structured Jewish life is around memory. A baby is born, rituals mark it. A boy becomes responsible for commandments, marked. A couple marries, marked. A loved one dies, marked. Even grief has structure, even joy has tradition. It creates stability in unstable times. Walking through those displays, I felt like I was walking through the blueprint of continuity. This pavilion isn't about power. It's about persistence. Then came the folklore, stories, amulets, folk art, protective symbols, not just from our religion but lived belief, handwritten charms meant to ward off evil, decorative motifs meant to bring blessing, stories passed down orally for centuries before anyone thought to write them down. It reminded me that culture isn't only what scholars preserve, it's what grandmothers whisper, it's what parents sing, it's what communities repeat until it becomes identity. I imagine Jewish communities in distant lands, far from Jerusalem, far from political centers, holding on to these rituals as anchors. When everything else was uncertain, tradition was certain. And here in this pavilion, all those scattered traditions meet again. What makes it even more powerful is that this isn't ancient biblical history. This is relatively recent. Some of these objects are only a few generations old, which means the people who used them had names we could still pronounce, faces that might appear in black and white photographs. It collapses time. You don't feel like you're studying something distant. You feel like you're remembering something familiar. At one point, I stood in silence in front of a display of Torah ornaments, crowns, finials, breastplates, each crafted differently depending on region. Silver from Eastern Europe, filigree work from North Africa, bold shapes from the Middle East. And finally, as I walked away from the pavilion, I didn't feel like I had finished a tour. I felt like I had traced a thread that began centuries ago and continues today. And somehow, in my own small way, I'm part of that thread too. That's what made this visit unforgettable. Not the objects, not the displays, but the realization that culture is not something you observe. It's something you inherit, something you protect, something you pass on. And inside that pavilion, surrounded by candlesticks, garments, amulets, and melodies echoing in memory, I understood continuity in a way I never had before. This wasn't just folklore, this was living history, and it's still being written.
Okay, so that concludes our tour at the Eretz Israel Museum. That's the Land of Israel Museum. We've seen different places, we've seen so many places, we've seen so many things that has given us room and time to come to modern day reflection of how man lived. And most things we have seen here in this museum are not artifacts that are found here in Israel. There are some that were brought from Africa, as we saw in the ceramic section. There are some that were brought from Turkey, from Italy, from so many places. But the ones that were excavated here in Israel are also boldly written. And it makes us, think and imagine how man lived in that time. It was amazing. But today we have almost everything we need. We have the luxury. We do not need to grind certain food with our bare hands before we eat. We all have grinding machines. There are sophisticated electric machines, for that today man doesn't need to work hard, sweat before we can eat. Well, thanks to civilization, then they had civilization, because if not for civilization, most of those things we've seen here in this museum wouldn't have happened. So I would say thanks to technology and thanks to ideas of man and invention, we are able to enjoy what we have today, and we are able to live easier lives than those people in the Byzantine and in the Hellenistic period. It's your boy the Crackhead, and this comes the end of this exploration. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much also for your subscription and your follows. It's your boy the Crackhead. Wish you all a wonderful day. Bye for now.